Hey, what's up, guys? So today I'm going to be reviewing the Sony Z1R. These are Sony's flagship headphone. They can be found for, I think, $2,000 or $2,100. They're actually on sale right now. I've seen them online for about $1,769.99, which is very expensive for any headphone. So these are definitely still a flagship, whether they're on sale or not. And I'm going to be taking a look at them today. Also, I do want to give a shout out before I start to Ash. Without him, I would not have the opportunity to review these. So you know who you are. You're probably watching right now. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to review the Sony MDR-Z1Rs. Now, please ignore my messy desk, but this is going to be the build quality on the Z1R. I really like the build. It's got these big, beautiful 70mm drivers. I like the way this looks. To me, it's very elegant looking. And I do have a headband cover on this. I think that you need one if you're going to buy this because these can get pretty ugly if you're wearing this a lot, and that's not something you want on a headphone that's expensive. I also really like the way this looks. I don't think it's plastic. I can't really tell what it is. Everything on here feels quality. This is metal. This honestly feels like it may be plastic. Underneath this is a lot of leather materials. And yeah, just a great headphone. It also has these little dimples to show you these pads actually can come off, and it helps you know where to put the pads back on. And to me, that's very useful. But yeah, overall, these are very beautiful. I do like that I can replace the pads on these. That's something that's not available on the Z7M2. I also do, the only one gripe I have about the build on these is this connector. Now, what I mean by that is you see kind of how it's a little bit of a nub on there. So these actually need proprietary cables that you have to screw in. I have found one specific cable that works without that, but it's just a pain when every other headphone, like you choose to use a 3.5mm because it's universal, and then they add this shit on top of it. So I can't use a normal cable. It's just annoying. It's very annoying part of the Z1R. But also, sorry to stop in the middle of my rant. My camera died, but I'm back now. But yeah, that's the only real annoyance I have with these, if my camera will focus on it again. But that's the only real annoyance I have, is just this little nub. It's very annoying to me. But besides that, everything's great. Great, beautiful presentation of the drivers when you look at them. The pads can be removed, and everything's just leather, metal. And even these notches, if you can see, the notches look really good on here too. Everything's numbered. Beautiful, says made in Japan right there. If you can see that. And to me, they're just an overall very beautiful and well-built headphone. The clicks sound great. I don't have any issues with the build on these, and they do have these little vents on the top. But yeah, overall, these are excellently built, and these pads are beautifully made, and these are some of the most comfortable pads you will find on a headphone, in my opinion. And in my opinion, just Sony makes some of the best built and the most comfortable headphones that I've ever tried. These are actually one of the most comfortable headphones I've ever tried. I don't have any issues with heat or anything either, and I live in a hot climate. I live in Texas. The only issues that I've ever had with heat on the Z1R is like after I'm listening for like 8 hours, and I don't always do that. So if you're not listening to these for like a long ass time, then the heat will not be an issue at all. So these are definitely a go in the build quality department, at least for me. So before I even start, I really like these headphones, and I don't want to sound like a shill. I don't want to come across like a shill, but I really like the Sony house tuning. I have a pair of Z7M2s. I just really love the way Sony tunes their audiophile headphones. So I want that to be known before I talk about the sound. And for the sound portion of this review, I'm going to break the Sony Z1R down into 3 things. I'm going to start off with the bass, and I'm going to talk about the treble, and I'm going to talk about the mid-range. But before I get into all that, I want to talk about source pairing with this. I did most of my listening on the Shit Ragnarok 2 with the Z1R on low gain or medium gain. And I also did a bit of listening on the Cavalli Tube Hybrid. I really like the Cavalli Tube Hybrid on these. It really surprised me because I usually don't use that amplifier that much. But these actually perform on the Tube Hybrid amps. They just don't perform on a full tube amp. So when I listened to them through the X-Duo TA26, it did not, the bass kind of just felt a bit lackluster in comparison to the Ragnarok and the Cavalli Tube Hybrid. But these don't need much power. I was able to power them off both of those amps just fine. I was even able to power them off the Shaneling UA Mini and a Moon River 2, which are more portable solutions. Like the Shaneling UA Mini, it's just a little USB-C device. I was able to power them completely fine off that, but if you do decide to power them off something like that, these are going to lack a bit on the low end. It's just not going to be as authoritative as it is on a full-size source like the Cavalli Tube Hybrid or the Shit Ragnarok. I also do think that on the Sony Z1R, if you're buying this, bass is going to be the highlight of the sound. You want great bass if you're buying something like this, in my opinion. Now, the reason I say bass is the highlight of the sound is because it's going to be very thumpy and authoritative. I love the way bass sounds on this, but it's the bass texture that really stands out to me. Yes, this does have an elevated bass region compared to a lot of the rest of the frequency response and the music, but where this tends to stand out a lot for me is the texture. And so let me explain what I mean by that. So if you're listening to something like EDM, like I was listening to Monster Cat on these, very good thump and anything you'd want from a bass region, like thump and punch and all of that. But where these differentiate themselves, at least for me personally, is when I'm listening to something like alternative rock and I can kind of hear the texture and I can hear drums. So you can differentiate drums really well from just thump. Like on some cheaper headphones or other headphones, you just hear a thump in the low end. You're not really hearing the whole presentation, like the details that are in the thump, if that makes sense. I hear all the details really well on the Z1R, and that just makes this a great bass detail headphone. Has a lot of texture down there, in my opinion. So this is one of the best bass headphones I've ever heard. But as I said, these also do have a little bit of a boosted bass region on this headphone with the tuning. So if you prefer a little bit more thump in your music, a little bit more rumble, a little bit more bass, these may be for you. Now, the mid-range on these sounds a bit scooped. There's a bit of a little recession. I can't tell you exactly where it is. It just kind of sounds like you're, like if this was the bass, it sounds like elevated bass. You're going, and there's a little scoop. And then you kind of hear mids and then highs. It just sounds a little bit scooped to me. I can't tell you where. I don't know. I've even looked at the frequency response. I can't just tell you where, but to me, it kind of sounds like the lower mid-range a bit. It's kind of like, how would you imagine like a U-shape tuning? A little bit. I don't think these are U-shaped headphones, but the mid-range just has a bit of a scoop to it, and I can't really explain where that's happening. But honestly, once I started listening to this headphone a lot, I kind of just forgot about it. And the mid-range is just, it's not really impressive. I don't have anything bad to say about the mid-range at all, but it's kind of just, it just feels a bit flat with that little low mid-range scoop. It does just feel very, like, I don't really have anything good that's really great to say about it or bad. This is not a mid-range headphone. It's just kind of there. Nothing really pops out at you besides that recession. Vocals are also presented like where you can kind of just reach out and grab them. So like if this is like what I'm hearing around me, they're never like pushed in my face. It's kind of just like somebody's singing and you can kind of like reach out and touch the vocalist, so to speak. That's kind of what I'm hearing on this. Nothing's ever feels pushed down your face, into your face or anything. Nothing feels like that with the vocalist. It's kind of just there and you can reach out and grab it if you want. And that's really what I'm hearing from the vocal presentation on this headphone. The details on the vocalist I actually find are really well. I don't have any problems with details for vocals on this headphone either. They're not the best compared to other flagship headphones, but I don't really have any issues with them. They sound really great. I also find instruments to come off with the same presentation as vocals. They're kind of just there and you can reach out and touch them. They're never pushed in your face or intense or anything. This is not an intense headphone at all, if that's what you're looking for. But I do find this kind of just everything is there and you just reach out and you can kind of touch it. That's kind of what I think for the instrument presentation and the vocal presentation on this headphone. Overall, I don't have any issues with the vocals and instruments on this headphone. The only thing is everything is just like kind of here, like around you where you can reach out and touch it. Nothing is intense on this headphone. If you want something that sounds intense, pushing everything in your face, this is not it, and I would steer very clear of this headphone. But if you kind of like a more relaxed sound in the mid-range, kind of things are just there and nothing's really pushed at you in the mix, these are a great headphone for that. Also, never had any issues with any details on this headphone. I think details come across exceptionally well, especially for a closed back. It's on par with most flagship stuff you'd hear. Some of the other flagship stuff that's focused more on details make you wish, if you've listened to that kind of stuff, like a Suzvara or something crazy, it may make you wish that these were a bit more detailed. But if you haven't heard anything like that, honestly, even me coming from like the HE1000s that are more detailed, I never really had any issues with the Z1R in detail. It's a very detailed headphone, just not the most, and nothing's pushed in your face. All the details are just there for you to grab. I think the treble is the weak point of the Z1R. If you want good treble, I don't think the Z1R is the headphone for you. Now, that's not to say the treble's bad at all, but if you want like more of the super like finite high-end details, kind of like in the top end, so like just things you would hear way up there, like way above 10K. This isn't going to have it. You're going to be missing out on some of those sounds on the Z1R. That's not to say this is a bad treble at all. The treble on these is actually really good. I think everything comes across where I can hear it really well. But if you do want something that's going to provide super high-end detail or super high-end sounds on the treble, like above, I want to say way above 10K. But if you want stuff that's going to provide that, this is not the headphone for you. You may find it lacking a bit in those super finite sounds above 10K. But everything else, I find that I don't have any issues with it. This is a great headphone, and it's going to be non-fatiguing. You're not going to have any issues with that. So it's not details that I think it's really lacking besides these super finite high-end frequencies. I just think that it was a tuning decision for this not to have a lot of treble, and this is a more relaxed headphone sound overall. So I want to get into a few comparisons for the Z1R, and I think the main comparison that I want to talk about, and a lot of people will be wondering about, is the Z1R's little brother, the Z7M2. I think a lot of people will wonder how the Z7M2 compares to its bigger brother, the Z1R. So let me start off with that, and honestly, just from like a build standpoint and comfort standpoint, these are really close to the Z1R. It still has the same great padding that the Z1R has, same great headband, similar build materials throughout the headphone, similar yokes. These actually use the same threaded cables that the Z1R uses. Now onto the sound of the Z7M2 versus the Z1R. I find the Z7M2 to have more of a mid-bassy sound. So where the Z1R excels in those really low like texture and rumble regions, I think this excels in mid-bass. This isn't going to have all that low-end texture that the Z1R has, not at all, but it's going to have a mid-bass hump, and so this is going to be more thumpy sounding, if that makes sense. It's going to have a thump, and honestly, I think most audiophiles who like more of a classic tuning will prefer the Z1R. But I think the Z7M2 provides something with the mid-bass hump, because I actually really like this. I own this headphone. I actually really like it for EDM music. Adds a bit more fun to the mix. This is just a fun headphone to me. That's about it. But yeah, this is fun. And honestly, besides that, these headphones are very similar. Everything about this is just a little bit worse than the Z1R. Everything on the Z1R is going to sound a little bit better than this, besides that bass region. And this mid-range scoop that I have on the Z1R that I discussed that I have an issue with, this has that same scoop. It's just more extreme. So honestly, to me, the Z1R is just a better Z7M2 with this is going to have more mid-bass. Besides that, it's about the same headphone tuning-wise to me. And resolution-wise, the Z1R is going to outperform the Z7M2. But the real question here is, do I think that this is like 2 or 3 times worth the price of the Z7M2? And usually I would say for most people, no. But if you're somebody who really does want the best, like low end on a dynamic driver headphone that's closed back, Z1R might be it for you. This is going to be more for people who want a mid-bass thump. And that's kind of what I think of this overall. I do think that if it was my money, I think I would rather have the Z7M2 than the Z1R just from a price standpoint. But if price was no objective at all and I didn't have to worry about it, Z1R all the way. So hopefully that was able to help somebody with this comparison. Another headphone I want to compare to this is the Fostex TH-X00. This might be a bit of a weird comparison for a lot of people, but I don't have a lot of expensive closebacks, and this is another bass-focused or oriented closeback in my opinion. Compared to the X00, this is going to give you a good tactile thump in the low end, where the Z1R is going to give you more texture and detail. This is just more of a tactile thump. I find most of the frequency response as well to be more flat on this. I don't really have any mid-range issues. There's nothing that jumps out at me in the mid-range and the high-end frequency, so nothing's going to really excite you here but that tactile thump you get in the sub-bass. But it's not going to be as full-bodied or rich in the frequency response and in all of the music as you would get on the Z1R, but it's also not going to have that mid-range scoop. I also think the Z1R is going to come across a lot more resolution on the Z1R, definitely. So if resolution is something that you need a lot of, I think I would skip the Fostex TH-X00, just strictly comparing it to the Z1R. Now, one last headphone I do want to compare to the Z1R that I have here is the Focal Clears. Now, compared to the Focal Clears, this is going to give you a lot of dynamics. So if you're somebody who really cares about dynamics, I would get the Focal Clears. And you don't need a closed back because these are open back and the Z1R is closed back. So if you don't need a closed back and you love dynamics, this clear all the way. Now, what I mean when I say dynamics is on this, you can kind of hear all the sounds presenting themselves dynamically with a lot of energy. Everything just sounds super like fun, like nothing over presents itself. It's just you can kind of hear everything in the mix. And that is what I would mean when I do talk about dynamics. But honestly, if you want bass texture and more of that, this is going to be kind of a decision of do you want good bass on the Z1R or do you want good dynamics from the clear? But if you want to close back, then you're probably not even considering the clear, and that's just a whole nother situation. But if you can do open backs, I think the clears actually present a better value pick overall. If you can find it for about $600 or $700 compared to the Z1Rs that are much more expensive. But if you do need closed backs, I can't tell you that the Z1R is going to disappoint you. I think it's a great headphone. But again, if money is no objective, the Z1R does perform. It's going to give you a much richer sound, a much more colored sound than the neutralness of the clear. And it's going to be a bit less dynamic, but it's going to sound more fun and more thumpy. So pick your poison here with these. So in conclusion, the Sony Z1R is one of the best closed-back headphones I've ever heard. It's one of my favorite closed-backs I've ever heard personally, and the only thing I can think about that people would hate on them is the price. The price on these is very expensive. It's kind of a hard pill to swallow. I kind of consider that the Achilles heel of the Z1R. For what you're getting, it's just very, very expensive, but it does have excellent build quality made in Japan, the excellent build quality you would expect from a Sony, and it's going to have very good bass texture, a very rich and fun sound signature. Some people may find these a bit V-shaped, but I don't want to call them that at all. To me, it's just very fun and rich and energetic. But honestly, I do recommend the Sony Z1R. I love this headphone. It's built excellent. I don't really have any issues with it at all. I do see some people maybe having some issues with the tuning and the super high-end treble region like I was discussing earlier. But if you don't have any problems with the tuning and you love this tuning and you really want great bass texture, comfort, all of those things, I can recommend this fully. It's expensive as hell, so I don't think a lot of people will be buying it, but if you can stomach the price and you're able to try these, which is kind of hard, but if you do get a chance to try these and you find out you like the Sony sound signature, I would recommend these. I would also recommend these to somebody who already has this Z7M2 and they're kind of wanting more detail. They want another Sony closed back. They like the sound and they don't really care if they give up that mid-bass hump. If that's something that you would like, then the Z1R is for you. But yeah, I fully recommend this. It's just expensive, so it's kind of hard to justify. It's one of those headphones that you will hear and you'll probably like it. If you like this sound signature, you will like the headphone. It's just very hard to justify at $1,800 or $1,700. Very hard to justify, but I do love this headphone and I'm gonna be sending it back soon. So again, shout out to Ash. Thank you for letting me borrow this headphone. I'm gonna miss it when I send it back. I love it. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the review and peace out. See you guys in the next video. Peace. Hello, this is just future me. I do want to add one more thing that I forgot to mention. The soundstage image on these is very exceptional, especially for a closed back headphone. I've been listening to these while I'm playing the finals, and I did that after I was about to post this for you. I just noticed that these have excellent soundstage and imaging for a closed back headphone, so I did want to mention that in this video. And yeah, again, that's about it for the review, and peace out, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video.